It's no secret that 2023 has been sort of a renaissance year for gaming. The highs have rarely been higher, but let me level with you. Just last year, I was this close to giving up on gaming altogether. So what got me to that point? What changed my mind in 2023? And why might you be feeling a lot of those same feelings? To answer that, we're gonna have to delve a little bit deeper into ourselves, but more importantly, to what's happened in gaming in the last few years. Before we explore my journey, let's take a closer look at what's been happening in the gaming world this year. Even if you're not following gaming news, you've probably heard rumblings of Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, even the stealth drop Hi-Fi Rush, and the long-awaited Dead Island 2. These are only a handful of the biggest video games that released this year. 2022 did give us a couple of gems, like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok, but that felt like gaming was just starting to recover from everything it's been through recently. While those games are great, it's this year as a whole that has made me feel that I still have an inner child in me that yearns for digital adventure. In light of 2023's successes, there have been some instances where gaming hasn't been the best. The Lord of the Rings Gollum game, Redfall, and the ongoing disappointment with Overwatch 2 were some of the biggest letdowns and backstabs that came from the industry in gaming. You know, kinds of games that seemingly come pre-packaged with an apology on Twitter. Thankfully, the former type of games far outweighs the latter. But I've noticed something, and maybe you have too. What do most of the best games of this year have in common? Give you a minute to think about that, but it's single-player experiences with no microtransactions, no loot boxes, and no battle passes. You might be asking, wait, hold on, is that trying to say that multiplayer online games have been what's wrong with gaming lately? And to that I say, not all of them, but mostly. Let's acknowledge something important. My experience with multiplayer games is totally anecdotal, and I know tons of people who only or mainly play multiplayer games. Gaming is an incredibly diverse world, and what I'm about to share is just one perspective. I know that many of you might completely disagree with me, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below, whether you're a diehard multiplayer fan or a single-player enthusiast sort of like me. We're all part of an amazing gaming community, and our differences in preferences are what make it so vibrant and dynamic. Okay, so now that we've set the stage, let me share a little bit about my gaming background. See, I was never really a huge multiplayer guy growing up. Don't get me wrong, I have fond memories of playing Mario Kart, Smash Bros, and COD Zombies with friends and family. Even now, when my friends and I are just trying to catch up, online games like Apex and yes, even Overwatch serve as our virtual hangout spots. In fact, Rainbow Six Siege was the main game that kept my friendships thriving through 2020. On the flip side, when I'm not playing with friends, I never really feel like grinding to reach prestige in Call of Duty multiplayer, and no matter who they add to Fortnite, I will not play that fuck. I won't dismiss these games as unimportant or even bad. The Call of Duties and the FIFAs of the world are still competent video games with systems and technology that evolve over time. However, gradually that may be. As a kid, I was mostly hooked on those narrative-driven single-player masterpieces. Games like Zelda, Metal Gear, and Assassin's Creed, the good ones. Even as a kid with little to no cash flow, I was able to get my hands on some of the real bargain bin jackpots that shaped some of the aspects of my gaming taste along the way. As I grew older, so did the gaming industry and the companies behind it. In the late 2010s, the gaming industry was on the cusp of a seismic shift, transitioning from awe-inspiring works of art to relentless engines of corporate capitalization. This transition happened to take place during my college years, when I began gradually drifting away from my own gaming roots. It's a phase of life many of us can relate to, isn't it? It's a coming-of-age chapter marked by academic pursuits, forging an identity, and managing the relentless pursuit of time. And it can feel like an uncomfortable odyssey into adulthood. The age-old adage, time is money, takes on newfound weight. Amidst these personal changes, gaming industry was evolving to cater more to consumers and their demand. One of the most notable changes was single-player games hyper-inflating their playtime. Game studios either spent unnecessary resources to add a half-baked multiplayer system, or dozens and dozens of hours of meaningless fetch quests, collectibles, or grinding over expansive maps. Remember when Assassin's Creed Odyssey basically made buying an XP boost with cold hard cash essential for timely story progression? Or when Dying Light 2 boasted 500 hours for a completionist run as if it was a gold selling point? With every 500 meters that a map grows, Developers add a new tower to climb, a new chest with crafting items, and a handful of enemies to keep you from going through it too fast. There are a handful of good examples of this though. The Zelda games have transitioned into a more open-world exploration style of game. This was praised far and wide, so you may be asking, how does Breath of the Wild get away with this? The keywords are innovation and design.
当初から変えていこうとゼルダの当たり前を考えてゲームの開発を始めていました。
Extensive playtime is a double-edged sword. Now that games are starting to retail for $70 US, it makes us question the value of our games more. If it's going to be $70, it better be either a 10 out of 10 experience or give me my money's worth in playtime. You can probably take a guess on which one is easier for developers. It's not easy to make an infinitely replayable game like Persona 5 or Disco Elysium that basically requires you to write, design, and develop for tons of stuff that players may not even end up seeing. Even if you're confident that your game is a cinematic masterpiece and your game engine is solid, The Last of Us 2 shows us that no matter how much money you put into your engine, how gripping your gameplay loop is, or how many Game of the Year awards you win, you can still alienate your audience with what many fans considered a series of poor story decisions for Chapter 2.
10 hours of Abby? 10?
Mel's pregnant.
No joke, 10 hours with this character. Yes, it's real. Yes. Fucks.
As a player, dedicating your precious remaining weekday hours to a game that might take months to complete naturally raises more questions about its worth. Is the time invested meaningful? And will the game provide a satisfying conclusion or reward for all of your dedication? It seems far easier nowadays to simply let the game be on somebody else's backlog where they can finish it and let you know if it's even worth coughing at. If you're anything like me, then that's what you did. You put off some of these more story-intense games with long commitments, while simultaneously getting your cheap thrills from 10-minute rounds of Overwatch and 20-minute sessions of Siege. Hell, I'll pay these $60, $20, or even $0 up front, then I'll play for as long as my heart desires with match after match of PvP, where I can slowly get better, improve my skills against other players. This for a few years, it went super well. Cyberpunk 2077 was coming out a buggy, broken, under-delivered mess, but I was getting play of the game in Overwatch. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was being criticized for lack of meaningful content and padding out its game, but I was becoming a hard carry in Siege. It was like being in a little bubble from the rest of the world. As long as I was playing these games on my free time, then I was set. And hey, I was even socializing technically. Eventually though, all good things come to an end. And for some of these multiplayer games, the end comes rather unceremoniously. My current playtime in Apex Legends is 334 hours. Chump change for some, but to me, I see almost 14 whole days of my life that I have given to that game. It's worth noting that I have not put a single cent into Apex thus far though. So technically, Apex did fulfill its free-to-play promise with me. I still don't even have half the characters, but it never felt like a detriment. Most of my free hours in this game were all in good fun, but towards the end, I began asking myself, why am I even playing this anymore? It wasn't making me happy, and when my friends and I lost, I felt an inexplicable form of dissatisfaction, not violent or loud, but just disappointment. When we won, I felt happiness for a moment, but only a second. Then it was queue up and go again, only to lose and go back to that familiar feeling. I'm not saying everyone feels this way or that you should understand. I'm not saying that you need to win in order to have fun. I'm saying that everyone is different. And for me, this wasn't it anymore. I still play to talk to my friends and spend time with my girlfriend because yes, she plays these games too, but I gave up on playing that game for fun. And I wasn't really trying to have it give me any satisfaction, and I wasn't going to force myself. There are a lot of reasons that you can abandon a game, regardless of single player or multiplayer. I stopped playing FIFA for a while because I realized that unless you're really good at that game, you probably can't keep up with the pay-to-win systems, and your experience is totally dependent on a small percentage of luck that the game lets you have. There's also the issue of online toxicity in most games. It's no secret that the internet truly brings out the worst in some people, and the fact that they can hide behind a username and a screen gives way to some of the nastiest talk and the most embarrassing behavior a human can display. Not to say all people are like this, some people online are inherently friend-shaped and can restore your faith in humanity. Suffice to say though, enough exposure to this side of the world can grind your gears to a halt. Even if your teammates start doing stuff like throwing games and calling you trash, and God, can you I gave up on Overwatch because when it became Overwatch 2, they went free to play, which, I think is good, but they did this in favor of implementing a battle pass system. I'll say that when done right, a battle pass is just in the background, like it was for me in Apex. I never bought that battle pass. Maybe I was tempted, but at the end of the day, all it had was a few skins and some other cosmetics. At best, it provides you those cosmetics and maybe an XP boost, but at worst, entire gameplay systems and characters are locked behind it in a game that specifically focuses on swapping characters to counter an enemy's character. In total, I have 306 hours on Siege, close to 300 hours on Overwatch, and God knows how many hours on all of the FIFAs. The fact of the matter is, at over 1,000 hours of combined multiplayer, I'm tapped out. And in the background of all this, I was thinking, man, I really want to finish Persona 5. Man, I should really look into the new God of War. Man, that Resident Evil remake sounds like a lot of fun. Which then led me to say, I wish I had time for these games. Many of us tell ourselves, I wish I had time, or there just aren't enough hours in the day. But in gaming, I was putting hundreds of hours into games that one day would shut down or transition into something unrecognizable to stay relevant. Point is, in the 300 hours of Apex, I could have finished Persona 5 3 times. And in the time I spent in Siege, I probably could have played all of the Resident Evil games. This feeling started to weigh on me, and I decided to take action starting in 2023. The end of 2022, Elden Ring won a well-deserved Game of the Year award, and 2023 begun not too long later. Forspoken, for some, was a sign of the end times, that even industry giants like Square Enix couldn't produce a fresh new IP without it feeling like an out-of-touch tech showcase. Gamers certainly voted with their wallets on this one, as it flopped so hard that the studio responsible was later disassembled and absorbed into other teams at Square Enix. Gamers put their heads to the pillow that night and wondered if there was still hope. Hi-Fi Rush came out, stealth dropped into Xbox Game Pass, and became the talk of the town. It was a short, sweet, charming little game, published by Bethesda and developed by Tango Gameworks. As I had just started my personal quest to clear my backlog of single-player games, Hi-Fi Rush gave me the kickstart I needed, with a short campaign and compelling gameplay. Hi-Fi Rush may have well has been the starting gun for 2023, not 2 days after the Dead Space remake came out, and demonstrated that gems of the past don't have to stay in the past, and they don't need to lose sight of what they once were to come back strong. Not even 2 weeks later, and everyone was talking about Hogwarts Legacy. Say what you want about Hogwarts, you can't deny that at the end of the day, it was a commercial and critical success. Atomic Hearts came soon after, bringing Like a Dragon Ishin with it, giving us more than enough to wait until March when Resident Evil 4 Remake came out, and it made as big of a splash as the original did. April gave us Dead Island 2, which we waited nearly 10 years for, and surprisingly, it's not bad at all after being stuck in development hell and switching teams like 4 times. And after that, we got Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Tears of the Kingdom, Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 16, Dave the Diver, Pikmin 4, Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, Sea of Stars, and most recently, Starfield. That's far from every game, but guess what? We still have tons to look forward to on the horizon. Spider-Man 2, Cities Skylines 2, Alan Wake 2, Mortal Kombat 2. I mean, 1. Yeah, 1. There are so many amazing games, and some that I didn't even get to talk about, that there's something here, surely, for everyone. I've only had the chance to play a few of these games because some of these games are hundreds of hours long, but let me tell you, my time with these games has fully restored my faith in gaming and put me back in touch with that inner child that would play all day to his heart's content. If you've been keeping up with the games I've talked about, you've probably heard enough about them since they're the second, third, and nth coming of the gaming Christ. If not, or you just like hearing people praise good games, then let me do the honors. Starting with Hi-Fi Rush, as I've said, this one is short and sweet. It may not have been a commercial success since most people would rather pay for Game Pass to knock this game out in a weekend, but still, this game was only $30 at launch. Point is, if you haven't played this, give it a shot. The story is very reminiscent of those Saturday morning cartoons with lots of little pop culture references to its inspirations, and it made me laugh a few times, I'm not gonna lie. I will say I'm not one for rhythm games in the sense that I never go out of my way to play them, but regardless, Hi-Fi Rush is my exception. If it's really your jam, no pun intended, then it has enough replay value with a scoring system and different difficulties that adjust the timing of your rhythm. You don't need to have some sort of internal metronome to play, but you'll get a combat boost when you nail the beat. In short, Hi-Fi Rush showed us gamers that there are still people out there experimenting with fun and creative ideas, and it showed the industry that we as gamers will show up for a quality over quantity piece. Moving on to Dead Island 2, I have to say, I was actually very hyped for Dead Island 2. I was anxiously awaiting for reviews to drop since I'd been waiting for a fresh take on a zombie RPG. When reviews came out, putting the game at around a 7, I was happy with that. Given that this game was stuck in development hell for 9 years, the fact that we got anything close to holding a spotlight in 2023 is nothing short of impressive. Sure, the game was simple and the combat was a bit one note, but I still enjoyed tuning into this game after a long day that tears zombies apart with the innovative flesh system. At the end of the day, it's just fun. And that's what games nowadays need. They don't need to be these hundreds of hours of building up your character or just getting better at the skill systems in the game. You don't need to get good, you just need to have fun. And sometimes a power fantasy like slashing through zombies is exactly what that means. Dead Island 2 serves as a reminder that you don't need an Oscar-level story, just a good core gameplay loop and something to stand you apart from the crowd. If you're a Nintendo fanboy, you probably don't need me to tell you how good Tears of the Kingdom is. And obviously there will be some people that say this is not true, or that Breath of the Wild was better, or whatever you might want to say about this game. But the second this game came out, people were practically shouting Game of the Year, and some people actually were. And you know what? I think I might have agreed with them if it still wasn't too early to call it. Tears of the Kingdom gets a lot of flack for reusing the map from Breath of the Wild. But that's only at a glance. There's 2 whole new maps to explore, both in the sky and underground. While the sky is a little lacking in my opinion, the depths are where I've had some of my most memorable moments in this game. I'll spend a whole week down there just filling out the map, doing the Colosseums, and finding some of the best gear in the game. I'll admit though, you get out of Tears of the Kingdom whatever you put in. The game won't force you to adapt its new mechanics, except maybe in a few circumstances, but you can still play this game like it's Breath of the Wild and never fuse a weapon, never build a vehicle, and never give this gross looking dude the frog flick. The thing that makes Tears of the Kingdom a core gaming experience of 2023 is also the absolute freedom that Breath of the Wild gave you, only this time tenfold. I love games that are as close to this create your own adventure thing as possible, in the sense that you can just ask your friend how they're doing and you'll be in completely different states of the game even if you started at the same time. For example, I ran around the first few hours of my game doing all the shrines and quests I needed to get the Master Sword, all while only having 4 hearts from the beginning. My friend, on the other hand, had way more hearts and stamina already built up and had been wandering the depths finding some pretty cool loot. Later, catching up with this friend, I had the full Hero of Time armor set, but he acquired Majora's Mask. Rarely did our paths intersect, but we were both having a damn good time. Still, the fact that a game like Tears of the Kingdom runs on the 5-year-old Android tablet that is the Switch, as well as it does, along with all the rich content and deep innovation that deserves some sort of medal. Tears of the Kingdom raised the bar not just for Nintendo, but for games as a whole, which leads me to the conversation behind Baldur's Gate 3 has been one of the loudest. When Tears of the Kingdom came out, sure, the bar for games was raised, but that was Nintendo doing what Nintendo does best, with their basically quadruple A gaming studio, all the money in the world, and the reportedly 6 years it took to make it. With Baldur's Gate 3, however, Larian Studios was only known for the Divinity game, and had considerably less funding and a smaller development team. There's one thing that these 2 studios do have in common though, and that is passion. A lot of AAA games lately have been made with only one goal: cash money. I won't say that every game of the past few years has been solely for profit, but I'll name names here. The mainline Pokemon games, the Assassin's Creed games, the Call of Duty series, and the FIFA or now EAFC games. I won't say that I know these games don't have any passion put into them, but when these games end up coming out half-baked or just like the one before, year after year, it's not like that hard to read between the lines. Some games just have executive and stockholder written all over them in big red font. Back to Baldur's Gate though, this has none of that. Looking into the dev's history a bit deeper shows how badly they've been wanting to work with the Dungeons & Dragons IP. The CEO has even come out on multiple occasions to show how passionate he is about the game, as well as gaming as a whole. Everything about this game screams, we tried our best, and we've given you something we're proud of. Nowadays, that's hard to come by. One of the most important things that the game studios fail at nowadays is listening to their fan base's feedback. Early access, again, like most things, is controversial when done wrong, but justifiable when done right. In Baldur's Gate 3's case, it's the best case scenario where those wishing to support the game can test the game and provide feedback, then the game studio actually addresses the feedback, ultimately resulting in a better game. Baldur's Gate 3 has given players a sense that their choices actually matter, be it in dialogue, in exploring the world, or even when interacting with items. Programming for players' choice in Baldur's Gate 3, I would say, is just as hard as programming for the physics and Tears of the Kingdom, if not more so. I could be entirely wrong. The point is that both require immense amounts of effort. Effort that most game studios seem to not be wanting to put in nowadays. Okay, back to Baldur's Gate. The amount of meaningful content that Baldur's Gate 3 presents its players, along with that same innovation of create your own adventure, is what earns Baldur's Gate 3 its slot in the top 10 games of Steam's most played list and a 96 on Metacritic. At the end of the day, you play whatever makes you happy. I'm not saying that my way is the right way and that everyone should drop their favorite MMO game to go pick up Animal Crossing. It's not how the market works, and there's no room for extremes here either. Find a balance if you need to, but if you're like I was and have been dumping hours into online games because it's easy, simple, and kind of like junk food, and you still feel empty day in and day out with gaming, 2023 is a year to change that. Don't be afraid of the commitment that comes with single-player stories. I promise you that some of the most enriching experiences you will have with gaming are those that are written with a clear beginning and a strong end. 2023 has been the year that has given us more than our share of great stories, and for me, it saved me from quitting a hobby that I was at the cusp of losing. This isn't even including games I played in 2023 that came out in years prior, but that's a topic for another video. While this has been my perspective, I believe that multiplayer online games have their own merits and can provide meaningful experiences. Many players find camaraderie and social connections in online multiplayer systems, and these experiences can be just as valuable as single-player narratives. Additionally, the gaming industry has evolved to cater to a wide range of preferences, offering a diverse array of games for different tastes. It's important to remember that what makes gaming enjoyable is subjective, and what works for one person may not work for another. Multiplayer and single-player games both have their place in the gaming world, and it's up to each of us to individually choose what resonates with us most. Gaming is all about the experiences and the joy it brings. If you've had similar experiences in your gaming journey thus far, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below telling me about the games that have had a profound impact on you or any thoughts you have about the gaming industry in 2023. Don't forget to like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe if you want to hear more from me on gaming content. Share it with your fellow gamers if you feel like you know anyone that feels the same way. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening, and your support means the world. And together, let's keep voting on gaming with our wallets. And that's all for now, and see you next time.